Welcome to the Life Giving Leader Podcast. Welcome back to the Life Giving Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Reagan, and I know it's been a hot minute, and so I just have to apologize to all you guys. I have gone on vacation. We've had some other things, and I just couldn't get it done. And so sorry for the delay in that. We decided instead of releasing a podcast last week to go to Orlando. I mean, it was already scheduled, but we got to go to Disney, and I'll tell you all about that in a minute. But for those of you who've been listening for a while, those of you who are new, I want to let you know about my friends at Retro 8 Films who have helped make this podcast possible. If you're not telling your story, someone else is, and it's usually your competitors. My friends at Retro 8 Films have helped guide me and some of the biggest companies on the planet through creating the most innovative, creative, and meaningful video content that draws people to your brands. And something I'm working on again, I'm going to share with you soon enough. These are the guys we're going to use to help create films and video that move people and endear people to your brand and to the brands we create. So don't waste any more time. Go to retro8films.com to get started. So, well, welcome. I'm glad you are here this week. This is a great episode. My friend Jamie Ivey, podcaster, author, speaker, based in Austin, Texas. She's on this episode, and we have a great conversation about a little bit of everything, her new book, the podcast, where that came from. One of the things I think many of you will find very interesting in this conversation is we talk at length about interviewing people and asking questions and how do you guide that conversation and how do you make sure that you get the content you need while the person you're interviewing also is able to present the content that they have need for. So that's coming up in this episode. Next week, guys, another one. Now, I'm getting to the end of this first round of edits and, the first round of recordings. Now, I've got a couple more, and then the plan moving forward, if you were wondering, as I mentioned before, I wanted to launch, but I've enjoyed this so much. I'm having so many great conversations that what we're going to do is we're going to move to a bi-weekly, starting mid-August, a bi-weekly, current podcast. So I'm not going to try to get a bunch in the can. I will be doing bi-weekly interviews and, did I say bi-weekly? Bi-weekly every other week. Did I do that right? See, sometimes you listen and you go, that guy doesn't even know what he's talking about. Would bi-weekly, is that twice a week? I don't even know. See, I'm just processing this with you, but twice a month, every other week, we're going to do a podcast. So whether that's bi-weekly, bi-monthly, see, I get confused. Anyway, I'll have to use my my Google Calendar to figure out how to do that exactly. But so we're going to do some live episodes. We got a bunch of things coming up. I'm going to do a whole new episode with my buddy Josh Turner. He and I are creating something new that we can't wait to tell you about. And so we'll do an episode soon to kind of just fill you in on that whole thing. And it's going to be great. So that's coming up. But next week, Brad Montague. Brad is an author. He wrote some incredible. He's one of the most creative leaders that I know. His helped take his brother and create the whole brand called Kid President, and got connected to Rainn Wilson from The Office, and they did stuff on Soul Pancakes, still do. But Brad is maybe one of the most kind and inspirational people I know, and so that's coming up next week, and that will come out on next Tuesday, I believe. But this episode with Jamie is super fun. So a couple things to let you know about before we get there. This episode was done early in quarantine, so we're obviously talking about that a lot more intense than it's still obviously intense for many of us, but this was when it was pretty fresh. So just to give you that update, we talked about Hamilton, the musical, and if you haven't seen it, now you can. That's what's crazy is it's on Disney Plus, and that's just a plug that you need to go watch it. It's amazing, maybe one of the best pieces of art, combined art that I've ever seen in my life. And then there's a few little audio glitches in here, but they're not bad. So just giving you the heads up on that. A couple other updates. My golf game, my index has scrolled back up a little bit. I did win my the 21st or 22nd annual OSO, which is a golf buddies trip. Guys from high school, guys from we've been doing this for 22 years, and I won it back in 2006, and I'd missed the last couple of years, and then we went this year to a course called the Macklemore Club up in on Lookout Mountain in North Georgia, and I ended up winning. So there you go. But my handicap has scrolled up a little bit. It's at 4.0 for those of you who wonder, but I'm playing today. Hopefully I can get it back down. We did go to Disney, and I've had a lot of people DM me and write me and text me going, "Oh my gosh, I've seen your Disney trip. Should we go?" Here's the thing. Yes. Unequivocally, yes. We literally wore masks every day. No big deal. They took our temperature as we came in. No big deal. And we rode everything we wanted as much as we wanted. For those of you that are Disney enthusiasts, this will give you just a taste. In Animal Kingdom, there's a ride called Pandora Avatar. And normally, when you look on your wait times on the app, that ride will be anywhere from 160 to 220 minutes. For those of you who can't do math, that's 3 to 4 hours of wait time. Unless you get there super early like we usually do, we run to the thing with super intensity, we ride it once, and we're done because it's that amazing, and we're not going to go stand in a 3-hour line. We went over this week, park opened at 8, no rush. We walked in. We literally walked with literally no rush, no speed. We walked, nobody around us. We rode the ride. Within 5 minutes of walking onto the line, and I've never in a million years would have thought I would say this, but what happened next? We get off the ride, we walk out the exit, and as we're exiting, there's a cast member that looks at us and says, "If you'd like to ride again, just go through here." Literally, a ride that normally takes 3 to 4 hours, we rode 3 times in a row without waiting. So the answer is yes, you should go to Disney if you have the ability to do that. But we had a great time. It was a great time with our family. I'm not sure we'll ever experience it like that again, but it was fantastic. So again, if you like the podcast, please rate and share it. And as we're starting to build kind of the future of what this is and the fact that I want to keep it going, I'm reminded of why this matters so much. Yesterday, I had the privilege of sitting with a new friend who listens to the podcast, and the episode that we had with Fran, where we talked about coaching, really stirred in him just the need to maybe get face-to-face with someone. And he reached out to me, and it worked out. And we had a couple hours yesterday, and it reminded me of a couple things. One, again, the importance of someone speaking into your life that maybe is from the outside that cares and has some skills to be able to do that. But two, this podcast is helping people and helping you guys. And so if it's just entertainment, great. But I really pray and hope that as we talk about things, that this is a helpful space for you and a place that encourages you to be life-giving. So, and I think this interview is no different. And so I got to sit with Jamie Ivey a few months back and talk about all of those things. And she is an amazing leader. Her podcast, Happy Hour with Jamie Ivey, has exploded. She's an incredible interviewer. She's an incredible storyteller. And I'm really honored to get to present this conversation to you. So without further ado, here's my friend Jamie Ivey. Welcome back to the Life-Giving Leader podcast. Today I have Jamie Ivey on the line. I can't decide. I keep saying on the horn, on the line. I can't figure that out yet. But Jamie, it's a little early over there in Austin, Texas. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing really well. It's Monday, and I like Mondays, believe it or not. So I'm doing well.
Why do you like Mondays so much?
Well, I normally, we're in quarantine, so everything's like, we have to think about it that way. But during the normal life that we used to live, I liked Mondays because I just came off a fun weekend with my family, and then my kids get on the bus, and then I enjoy that first day back at work.
Yeah, me too.
I really do. I love
like
Mondays.
Getting going. Now, I don't know about
too.
you. I'm super, my wiring is unstructured more than structured. So it's not that I like about it, because I actually like that every week looks different for me. Now, right now it doesn't. Good grief. It feels like Groundhog Day every day. But normally, and I think your weeks are probably like this. Okay, what is this weekend hold? I'm traveling here. I got to do this. And I've missed some of that. So just a little bit, can you give us a little bit of background? You do a bunch of things, but I know some of the things you're most proud of is being a wife and a mom and a podcaster. So for those that don't know you, Jamie, back us up a little bit and give us a little quick story of how you got to what you're doing now.
Yeah, my husband Aaron and I live in Austin, Texas, and we've been married almost 19 years. We have 4 kids.
When is your
Uh,
anniversary? Because we're all coming up on 19.
oh, June 22nd.
Okay, so we're August.
Okay, yeah. So 19 years and 4 kids and 2 dogs later, here we are. And I started my podcast 6 years ago, and it was kind of just this. I wanted to do something creative, and I had worked in radio for just a really hot second. And so that kind of gave me this desire to do something on my own. So I started the podcast on a whim. It was really awful. I'm kind of thankful right now you can't find the first 50 episodes on iTunes. I don't know where they went, but I'm not asking because let me just tell you, I was trying to figure it out. And so I've been podcasting, and then I wrote a book and that came out, and been speaking, and really just grateful for what I get to do.
And so you guys launched in with Austin Stone pretty early on, and your
We
church. And how is church and that stayed central to your family while all of a sudden God starts reaching you out into some different spaces? Has that been a unique balance for you?
It's been beautiful if I think about it, really. We moved here, we've been here almost 12 years, and the Austin Stone was, I don't know, 15, 16 years ago. So we got in pretty early, and I'm so thankful for my church. I've grown more in my faith in these last 12 years than I have in the whole time before that. I
Yeah.
started following Jesus when I was in my early 20s. So our church has been so grateful. I mean, so good for me. I'm so grateful for it. And then as I started traveling and speaking and writing, I feel like the foundation that the church gave me, and it's like this home base I get to come home to. And my husband works there; he's a pastor there. So I feel grateful to have a church that believes in me and my skills and what I can do, and just happily supports me in everything I do.
Yeah, I love that too. And your husband Aaron is an incredible worship leader. I met him early on with Catalyst Days, and really enjoyed just kind of seeing him lead worship. I think we had a one day in Austin. Anyway, they came up to Dallas, did Catalyst Dallas for a little while, and so that's been a lot of fun. So I want to switch gears a little bit. When you this is called the Life Giving Leader podcast. When you hear those words of a life giving leader, what's one or two attributes that comes to mind for you?
I think one of the first things I think about is is humility. And I have humility on my mind right now because Aaron and I are working on a project about marriage together, and everything just keeps coming back to like humility and laying yourself down, and not in a bad way, but like Jesus, like that's what it means, like not in a walk over me, but in a Jesus way of having that humble spirit. So I think of a leader who has humility, which means they want to see the people they're leading succeed. They
Yeah.
want to see the people they're leading really thrive. And I think about that. Like when I'm not leading a big team, I've got like 3 people that we do
Right.
this
Right.
stuff together. It's so great. It's so great. But I think about all the people that I speak into through the podcast, through the book, through the speaking. And for me as a leader, if I look at myself as I'm leading them, man, I want them to succeed more than anything else. Like I want them to follow Jesus. I want them to find their gifts. I want them to find their passions. And so for me, I think a leader is one that wants success also besides humility, but they want success for the people that they're leading.
That's really good. And that makes me think about you and Aaron and the decisions you've made as a family. You have 4 kids, three are adopted, correct, Jamie?
That's
And
right. Mm-hmm.
um, that in itself is putting yourself in a place of humility, which is also saying, I want I want these kids to flourish. And we know that we can fight. We're not saying we're going to do it perfect, but we're going to try to help provide a culture and environment for them to do that. Talk about the adoption journey for you guys. Where did God start stirring that in your hearts and make that a part of your life?
Yeah, so we've been a family of 6 for 10 years. And so, adoption feels like this other lifetime for me a little bit. I mean, I don't think about adoption every day. In fact, I probably don't think about it until someone asks me about it. But so we started the adoption process for our kids in 2009. And for us, I mean, a lot of people, since our family is built on adoption with 3 out of our 4 kids joining us, the common assumption is you and Aaron must have walked into marriage knowing that you were going
Mm,
to adopt someday. And the truth is, I never knew anyone that was adopted ever. I mean, I'm sure I did, but it wasn't a thing for me, growing up in the 90s. I didn't see that happening at my church. Adoption was not a part of my life.
right,
And then
right.
we moved to outside of Nashville, and we were going to a church, and we were young newlyweds. And all of a sudden, we were surrounded by people who were adding to their family through adoption. Most of them were international adoption. And so God just started stirring in us something that we had never even considered. And that led us to our first adoption, which was a domestic adoption. So we lived in Tennessee at the time, and our son was born in Texas. And then from there, I mean, Tyler, I wish I had like this most profound explanation other than God just kept moving us that way.
Yep.
I mean, really, it's all there is. I went to Haiti on a trip with the church, and just my eyes were open to poverty at a level I've never seen before, as like a 24-year-old.
Yeah.
And that changed me. It changed my ideas about life. It changed some things about God. It just really, really wrecked me. And when we started to talk about adding more kids to our family, adoption just kept coming up. I mean, do we struggle with infertility is always the next question. I don't know. Maybe, who knows? But it really is just God just kept moving us that way.
Yep.
And so here we are, 12 years later from that start of that journey, and 4 kids, and we're one big crazy family over here.
But that's what God does for a lot of us sometimes, right? It's not the same formula every time. I know for us, and we decided to move a year ago to put our kids in a new private school, which we'd never done. All of this while I felt like I was supposed to leave Catalyst. And so I was very unsure, building a business, doing these things, going, who knows it? But I told my wife one time in the middle of all this uncertainty, there's one thing I'm certain of is these 2 things we're supposed to do. Like, that's all I knew. Like, and so I've never had but that was the first time in my 43 years of existence that God worked that way in me to speak that way. And so I think that's what he does.
And it's crazy. I remember someone recently asked me, like, how do you know when God's speaking to you? And I was just a little stumped because I was like, I don't know, but I know, like, I know that I know. And I feel like when I look back at adoption, that's one of those examples. And then Aaron and I have had just a handful of other examples in our life where we go, this seems crazy. Like, it seems crazy, but we just can't stop the fact that we think God is asking us to do this. And so for us, even with adoption and then other things in our life, we just look at it like, you know what? We're going to keep walking until he says stop.
Yep.
And there have been times where, Tyler, we have kept walking, like, in faith. This is what you're asking us to do. And he told us to stop.
Yep.
And so we have, and it's a thing of being in tune. Like, as a Christian, is how we talk about, we have the Holy Spirit. And that's just one of the ways that I can say that the Holy Spirit does what he does best. And he tells us yes and no. And when you're listening to him, I think that
Yep. And it's beautiful that even the no's oftentimes turn into upgraded yeses or better options, and I think your podcast is probably one of those things, don't you? Because you did the radio thing for a little while, which is a crazy story in itself. And maybe one day we can go back to that. But, and then even earlier you said, I'm glad nobody can listen to the first 50. 50 is a lot, Jamie. And so if you,
I know.
like most people go, yeah, the first 3 weren't good, I'm out. But you stayed faithful to it. And then the next thing you see is, wow, oh, okay, there's a few more listeners and there's a few more of this. And next, now it's become very central to your career, very central to your story.
Yeah.
That's an obedience thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And I remember when I made it, it was really just this fun hobby. And I love talking about this with people who are starting businesses because it was just a hobby for me, which means I would record and release whenever. And, Tyler, this was 6 years ago, before there were so many podcasts out there. It's everywhere now. And it's everywhere now. And I love it because I'm a podcast consumer. And so I'm so happy for you starting this show. I love it when people start shows. It's so fun. But I remember that I had to make a decision. And I was like, okay, I can either keep doing this as a hobby, and this is getting expensive as a hobby, and there's no return on this investment, really.
Right.
And, I'm like sitting in my living room, all the things. And so I decided at episode 50, I said, okay, at 50, I'm going to make this a job. And I changed a bunch of things, and I stepped out in a lot of scary situations. And here I am now, like hundreds of episodes later.
So one of the things I love listening to in your podcast and watching you even interact with people, as it seems like you're very curious about their stories. And we'll talk about your book in a minute and how because story is a big part of your life. I think for some of our listeners, they've never realized that interviewing is a skill, that understanding what am I trying to get from people? Like, what are we trying to say? Like, when I thought about today and talking with you, I knew there were a few things that are in the lane of which the content I want to create for the podcast. that fit right into your story, but it wouldn't make a lot of sense for me to go outside of that. So there's thought that goes into it. What are you thinking about when you're preparing to interview someone, and even in the process, what's one or two of those practical things you could tell listeners that go, try to get this from them, or this are the things I'm trying to look for?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things that I think has been a skill that I've had to hone in on and really lean into a lot is to be a really good listener.
Yep.
And I think that sounds like, oh, that sounds so cliche, like you're interviewing, be a good listener. But here's the problem is, like you said, when I'm interviewing someone, I usually know where I want us to go. Like I
Yep.
know where I want this to end up. I know what track I want us to be on. I'm on that track. And so when I'm listening, I need to keep us on track to get there. But I'm also really open-handed on my show because mine is different than yours, is it's not so focused. And so
Yep.
I'm really open-handed with the conversation. And if it goes a place that I think this could be good, I think there's something here,
Mm.
then I have to be willing and able in the middle of that conversation to detour. But here's the thing. I got to remember where I was going, because if that flops, I need to get right back where I was.
Yep.
And so I think, I always say I'll only do like 3 interviews in a day because my brain is so tired after interviewing, because you're thinking so many things at the same time. And so
Yes.
listening well, I think, is just something that you have to really practice. And then, I think listening well is number one. Number two is I really think it's important that the person that you're interviewing feels comfortable.
100%.
Before this quarantine, I did all of my interviews in person. And so for me, it is so fun to just sit with someone
Mhm.
and for them to feel safe in my office, to feel safe talking to me, to feel like it's just two girlfriends chatting. And I think that is a skill as well, is to make people feel so comfortable
Yep.
that you finish the show and they're like, oh my gosh, that was it. And I can't believe I've never said that out loud before. And I'm like, yes, that's what we're going for.
Yep.
But just to listen well and to make them feel safe with you asking questions to them.
That's really good. I think what you just said about being tired after interviewing. Oh my gosh. So when I would do 2 days of Catalyst, I'd always have one or two stage interviews and then try to lead and host and do the other things. And the two kind of major mistakes I said, like things I would say after that were just like train wrecks, happened after interviews because I had been so zoned in. And then most of the time when you're interviewing well-known people, they're used to running the stage. I interviewed Tyler Perry at
Oh my
Atlanta,
gosh.
him and
Yeah.
Scott Harrison, and they, as soon as he came on that stage, he took over.
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
part of my job was to go, this is
Uh-huh. Yeah.
so
But you know
how,
what?
yeah,
Here's what's funny, Tyler, is I remember when I released my first book, people were giving me advice on interviews because I was doing all these new press. I'd never done all these interviews before. Here's what someone told me. And I always think about this when I interview big, well-known people that
yep,
this is not their first rodeo. This is what someone told me. They said, when you get out there, no matter what they ask, you know what you want to talk about.
mm-hmm,
So as someone who is being interviewed about my book or my projects, I'm coming in with an agenda.
absolutely, and you should
Here's
be.
my agenda, and you should be. But as an interview person, I
Yep.
know that now. I know their agenda, which is not bad. This is all good things. But so it's also like your job when you were talking about that interview, which I have been in those situations when you're like, hey, remember me? I was supposed to ask you questions. It's also your job to give them the space to do what they want to do, but you
100%.
still got to lead that train.
Yep. Yeah, because we presented that we're going to teach you on something. And if that thing goes off the rails, but that's also what makes it beautiful. But that's why I'm saying that's why we're spending time on this, because there's a skill to it. Like
Mhm.
you have to learn. Now he's just said that or she said that. How do I weave that? So that's why your brain gets so tired, because you're going, how do I take this? How do I take
Yes.
this and transition it to the point that I need to make or
It's
whatever?
100%. It's 100%. I say that the art of tying things up and
Yes,
transition to something else is what makes your brain so tired. You're so right. And I love doing that. It's
I do
for me,
too.
but you have to still be engaged with them, but know where you're going to go. So it's
Yep.
something that I'm thankful just because I've been doing it for 6 years and I have a lot to learn for
Yep.
sure.
Yep.
But I do see like, oh, I can see how you're getting better at that. And that's fun to
Yep.
see.
It's very similar in producing events, is that I think the best producers know how to transition best. That's where they focus. Like some people just love the content, but there's a difference between technical interviewers or technical producers and the people that get the middle,
Hmm.
because technical people, and I've watched it on stage. I watched a friend interview Gary Player, the golfer, and Gary Player is a wild card. He started going off. But this
Uh-huh.
guy had his questions that he's going to answer because he read the book and he did this thing, and it quickly became a disaster because there
Yeah.
was just this. It's his emotional intelligence in the interview was not being displayed because you're like, dude, he's not going to go there. Like
Mm-hmm.
you gotta figure you're going to have to
Yep.
pivot in this moment. So it's
Yep.
great. So let's pivot. Speaking of pivot, right there we go. We just did it. So your book that came out in 2018, If You Only Knew, was a pretty personal release for you, a pretty personal story, and that's really what the theme is all about. Is like, there's a lot that I haven't said, and now people know me. Talk about like how hard was that hard for you to start talking about some of these harder things from your story, and what feelings came from that? Because you talk about the freedom that comes from that, but where did that come from for you, Jamie?
Actually, believe it or not, the book was not hard to write at all. And here's why. A lot of the things I was talking about happened 20 years ago.
Yep.
And so I have walked through these. I have journeyed through these. This book was me saying, here's what God's done in my life over the past 20 years. There were some things that were current to date and personal, which I had to do there, or else people would be like, oh, I guess she's perfect and everything's good now. And I'm like, no, that's not true.
Of course they are.
So it wasn't, yeah, it wasn't difficult to write because I have been having these conversations for years and years and years. The difficultness, I think, was for me, these were a lot of things that I felt shame for many,
Yep.
many years. And I felt if people know this about me, they'll question my authority as, someone who knows God's word or whatever. They're all really, really dumb things that I thought. I mean, when
Yeah.
you say them out loud, you're like, well, that's dumb if someone were to do that. I know it's dumb, but people do it. So
Of
that's the
course.
problem. So for me, it wasn't hard because I want to be that cheerleader for women to say, hey, you're not the sum of your story. Like, yes, so you made some mistakes. And honestly, the mistakes I've made in my life that brought me so much shame, some people would look at them and be like, that's a walk in the park.
Yep.
Like, that is dumb that she's worried about that. But it was my reality. It
Mm-hmm.
was my feelings. It was what I was dealing with. And so the book really was me going, hey, listen, look what God's done for me. And he
Yep.
has the same thing to offer you, is that you don't have to walk in shame. You can experience freedom, and you can be like you can be an evangelist for the gospel because God has changed your life so much. And so it was this big cheerleading book for me, really, that just
Yeah.
had my stories in there because I wanted women to see, because they would look at me and go, okay, A, she's a pastor's wife. B, she's quote unquote in the public. She has a podcast. She speaks and she's saying these things out loud, and she's not like hiding under a rock, afraid that we're all going to
Mm-hmm.
stone her to death. Okay, well, maybe you can have conversations with your girlfriends and
Yep.
talk to them about things that you're struggling with. That was the hope for the book. And we've seen that. It's been beautiful.
That's awesome. And was there a relief when you just open and honest about some of that? Did you need that almost like a therapeutic opportunity?
For me, Tyler, it wasn't the things that I walked through 20 years ago. I included some stuff in the book about some struggles that kind of had leaked over into my adult life, my
Right.
life of not, a lot of my sin was sexual temptation and sexual promiscuity and all that kind of stuff. And so there were some leaks of that over into my current day life.
Yep.
Now, writing about that, Tyler, I wanted to get under the covers and never come out. And so
Right.
I know what that feels like.
And you're
Because
going,
saying
does
those
this
things,
really need to be in there?
oh, I was up until, the day before, I'm like, do
Right.
I really need to write that? But that has provided so much freedom. And, your show's about leaders. And I say in the book, like, this is speaking to church leaders, I
Yeah.
would say, if you're at a church and you have never heard people who stand on your platform confess sin and repent and talk about the ways that they're struggling, I'm by no means saying that everyone needs to get up and say,
Yeah. Yeah.
here are my lists of sins for the day. No, but I'm saying if they're preaching sermons and they're not going, here's how I've had to repent of this, or here's how I've struggled with this, then you need a new church, because I think leaders have got to be
Yeah.
vulnerable with their people so they can teach them how to confess, to repent, to walk in freedom. Like, we don't want to walk in shame. We want to walk in freedom. And the way that we see that a lot is when we see someone else do it. And so as much as I wanted to crawl under the covers when, a few things in that book came out, it's been the things that I've heard the most response from, of women going, thank you for talking about this, because no one is.
Yep. And I would say that I would echo that sentiment for you, is like, thank you for doing that. One of, Brene Brown says, what story are you telling yourself? And, Patrick Lencioni in the leadership says vulnerability is the key to great leadership. Like, being open, and like, the good joke is that in leadership, if you're not willing to be vulnerable and you're the boss, they know it. And they also see that like, you're delusional. Like you think you're good at
Yeah.
things, or you're not being honest about them
Yeah.
when it's not really true.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to ask you a couple quick lightning questions, because we're getting short on time. And
Lightning questions make me so nervous, by
do
the
they,
way.
why do they make,
Yes, because I feel like my brain doesn't catch up with what you said. Like as much as I'm talking about earlier, like your brain's got to work fast. I
uh-huh.
hit the lightning question.
And
I
I'm
go,
doing it on Monday morning.
I don't even know.
Okay.
I'm ready.
So best marriage advice you and Aaron have been given.
Best marriage advice that you and well, this is funny. This is not the best marriage advice, but I think it's funny. Is when we first got married 19 years ago.
Yeah.
People are like, sleep naked. And then you're like, you get all these kids and you're like, nobody's actually sleeping naked, guys, because people
If
are
you are,
showing
it's
up at
weird.
all times of the night. Yes. So that was when we first got married, we're like, ooh, great advice. And
Right.
then, you know, a few years in, we're like, this is dumb. Let's put some clothes on.
I think somebody was playing a practical joke on you, Jamie. That's what I think.
A big practical joke. You know, one of the things that I have heard a lot is to, you know, be one of the first people to apologize. And I'll tell you, that's hard for me. And I think it's hard for Aaron too.
Yeah.
And so that's been really, we've seen a lot of growth in our marriage when we have been willing to say like, hey, I'm going to just apologize and own whatever I did.
Yep. All right. Favorite movie of all time.
Oh man. Favorite movie of all time. When I was younger, I watched Grease every day, all day. I know all the words. It's so inappropriate for middle school kids to watch, but I knew all the words. I showed my whole family Top Gun the other day, and none of them had seen it. None of them.
Including your husband?
Including my husband.
Stop.
Where was he? I know what's happening. But if there's a movie that I'll stop everything if it comes on, it's probably going to be Steel Magnolias.
Okay. I get that. That's a great movie. My
also,
wife
do you
is
love how
any
when
John
you ask
Hughes
me a question,
movies.
do you love how when you ask me a lightning question, I give you 7 answers?
3 answers. I love it. But that's probably why we're very similar in the way we think, because I thought, oh, what are the 4? And in each of those, I had another option for you, because
I know, right?
If you could only listen to one band and their entire catalog, let's just say for the rest of 2020, for the rest of your life, that's too much. But for the rest of this year, and you can listen to all their songs, but that's the only thing you can listen to. Who's that going to be?
Okay, I'm going to really throw you for a loop here. Okay?
I'm ready.
Because this is not a band, it's a soundtrack. The Hamilton soundtrack.
Wow. That's fair, though.
Is it fair?
Yes, because that's one of the best artistic things I've seen in my lifetime.
Oh, I loved it so much. And we listened to the album all the time. My kids know all the words and they've never seen the show. And so that's a fun album for me.
That's amazing.
I was probably listening to it yesterday. That's why it came in my head. Yeah.
Well, Jamie, it was great to finally meet you in person a few years ago. And I'm a huge fan of you and Aaron, grateful for the way that you continue to fight to redeem stories. I think so many people let shame and guilt keep stories from being redeemed. And I'm just grateful for the way you're doing that through your podcast and your book and really just your life. So thanks for being a part.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamie. If you want to follow her podcast, again, as we've talked about, you can go to Happy Hour with Jamie Ivey and find that anywhere you listen to podcast. Her newest book, If You Only Knew, we talked about it in the interview. I think it's just one of the most candid and honest conversations that's filled with grace. And for many of us, we need a book like that in our lives. You can go to jamieivey.com on the web if you want to find out more about her books, speaking, all the different things that come with that. And then on social, she is at Jamie Ivey, JamieIvey. So super grateful for that. And I think there is so much hope when people share their stories of faith, but how they combine it with the grace of God. I think also just the skills in which she likes to tell stories of grace like that, coming from her background. You know, those of us that do these kind of things, I know for me, when I do a podcast, I'm always thinking content through the lens of the life-giving leadership, what that looks like. Even the new book that I'm working on, and again, we'll talk about that very soon, is very much geared around this idea of bringing life to the people around us. And so for Jamie and her book, If You Only Knew, and the way in which she has conversations with leaders to kind of bring out those stories of grace is spectacular. Her and her husband have done an amazing job, amazing ministry, and I'm grateful for that time. So I hope this has been a good episode. Again, we're going to move to I just don't even know what it is. We're going to move to every other week starting mid-August, and I'm excited to introduce you to some more new friends. Next week, we've got Brad Montague. We're going to finish this first round of the Life-Giving Leader podcast with John Acuff. There's not a better closer on the planet. And so looking forward to these next few weeks, and thanks for staying with it. Thanks for listening, and if you like it, share it with your friends, rate it, and we'll see you next